What if I told you that when a man begins to lose interest, it doesn't explode in one dramatic moment? It erodes quietly like water against stone. Most women don't see it because they're trained to look for declarations, for words, for confessions. But attraction doesn't die in a speech. It dies in silence, in hesitation, in the absence of what was once natural. A man doesn't announce when he's pulling away, because pulling away is not a decision. It's an instinct. He doesn't need to explain it to you, because in his biology, in his evolutionary wiring, explanation is irrelevant. What matters is that his energy is shifting, and if you know how to read it, you'll see the signs long before he admits it to himself. A man who is invested is predictable. He pursues. He checks in. He feels urgency because, on a primal level, he knows other men exist. And if he doesn't secure his place in your life, another will. This is why, at the beginning, everything feels like fire. He texts first. He makes plans. He pays attention to the smallest details you mention. It's not romance. It's survival. He's proving his value because he's in the stage of acquisition. But when that urgency fades, when his biology no longer registers you as a prize that could be taken from him, the pursuit softens. Not out of laziness, but because his subconscious is recalibrating. Either he believes he has you, or he has already started to detach. And that is the first hidden sign. Imagine two hunters in the wild. One has just spotted prey and is locked in with focus. Every sound, every step, every breath is calculated to move him closer to the kill. The other hunter has already fed. He leans back, distracted, uninterested in the chase. He may still hold the bow, but his eyes aren't scanning the horizon. That's the difference between a man who is deeply engaged with you and one who has started to lose interest. His actions shrink, not because he consciously chooses to stop, but because his instinct tells him the hunt is over. For you, this feels like distance. You notice he used to remember the smallest things, and now he forgets. He used to show up with energy, and now he shows up with obligation. And the worst part is that he may still say the right words. He may still call you beautiful. He may still tell you he cares. But words cost nothing. What matters is investment of effort, time, and focus. And when those begin to wither, it's because, at some level, his subconscious has started to move you from the category of priority into the category of background. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Men rarely lose interest suddenly. Instead, they test. They pull back slightly to see what happens. If you chase, if you overcompensate, if you panic, you confirm to him that he holds the power. And paradoxically, that accelerates his disinterest, because in his evolutionary psychology, a woman who invests more than he does loses her perceived value. A man wants to feel like he had to earn you, and when he realizes you are working harder to hold him, the polarity flips. That's when he begins to see you less as a prize and more as a possession. And possessions, by nature, lose their shine. Think of the man who once carved time out of a packed schedule to see you. When that interest is alive, he'll bend his world to make space. He'll find an excuse to call, to check in, to surprise you. But when the spark fades, suddenly he has endless reasons why he's too busy, too tired, too distracted. It's not that his life got harder overnight. It's that his motivation to prioritize you weakened. The truth is simple. When a man is interested, excuses don't exist. When he's losing interest, excuses multiply. You may ask yourself, but if he's losing interest, why does he still stay? Why not leave completely? Because biology is conservative. A man doesn't abandon resources easily. Even if his attraction wanes, he may still enjoy your presence, your comfort, your validation. He may even keep you close while quietly scanning the horizon for new opportunities. This is not always conscious manipulation. It's instinct. In the wild, no hunter drops the food he already has before securing the next kill. In relationships, the same instinct applies. And here is where most women misinterpret. They think, he's still here, so he must still care. But presence without pursuit is not care. Presence without energy is not interest. The body can stay while the mind is gone. And if you don't learn to read that separation, you'll find yourself in a situation where you're giving everything, while he is already halfway out the door. Now, you might feel a sting when you realize this, but that sting is power, because clarity is power. You are no longer guessing. You are no longer waiting for his words to confirm what his actions have already revealed. The truth is visible if you train yourself to see it. When his interest fades, it's not hidden. It's written in every hesitation, every silence, every excuse. The question that changes everything is not, is he losing interest? The real question is, what does his loss of interest reveal about how I am positioned in this dynamic? Because if you don't adjust, you'll fall into the trap of chasing, proving, convincing, a game you can never win. Interest cannot be negotiated back into existence. It must be reawakened through scarcity, through value, through a reset of the polarity that drew him to you in the first place. And this is where strategy begins. If you understand the psychology of attraction at its primal core, you stop reacting emotionally to his withdrawal and begin responding strategically. Instead of clinging tighter when he pulls away, you create distance. Instead of demanding answers, you embody the very thing that made him pursue you in the first place: mystery, value, and independence. A man doesn't fall deeper for a woman who explains her worth. He falls for the woman who demonstrates it by refusing to compete for his half-hearted attention. This is only the surface of the truth. Because the deeper question isn't about his fading interest, it's about how you can position yourself to never be at the mercy of it again. And that is what separates the woman who loses time in uncertainty from the woman who commands respect in every relationship. If this unfiltered truth makes sense to you, then you belong here. Subscribe, because the knowledge we share next week about male silence won't be found anywhere else. When a man is slowly losing interest, he rarely shows it in ways that are obvious. He doesn't slam the door. He doesn't announce that he's done. Instead, he creates a series of micro-distances, tiny adjustments in his behavior that add up over time. And if you don't understand what they mean, you'll misread them as temporary mood swings, when in reality, they are signs of a shifting hierarchy in his mind. Attraction is not static. It is dynamic, like a scale constantly balancing weight. Every choice, every behavior, every exchange tilts that scale in one direction or the other. When a man begins to pull away, it's not because he suddenly forgot how he felt about you. It's because the scale of value is shifting. Somewhere in his subconscious, the urgency to keep you is being outweighed by his comfort, his distractions, or his options. And the more you try to correct that balance by giving more, the heavier your side becomes. What you think is restoring balance is, in fact, tipping it further away from you. Picture this. In the beginning, he sends you a message before he goes to bed. Not because it's a rule, but because his mind is on you. Later, when his interest fades, that habit breaks. He still talks to you, but now the conversations are initiated by you more than by him. When that dynamic flips, you feel it. You rationalize it. You tell yourself he's busy, stressed, distracted. But a man who is truly captivated doesn't forget to reach out. His biology doesn't allow it because the possibility of losing you keeps him alert. When that instinct shuts off, it's because somewhere inside, he no longer believes there's a risk of loss. And this is where the psychology becomes brutal. A man does not sustain interest in a woman he perceives as fully secured. In the wild, nothing of value is guaranteed. Prey runs, rivals compete, storms destroy. But in modern relationships, women are taught to prove loyalty early, to overinvest, to make it clear they won't leave. That instinct, born out of love, backfires. Because to a man's subconscious it says, "You don't have to fight for me anymore." And when the fight disappears, so does the fire. Let's analyze a scenario. A woman notices her partner no longer plans dates. She brings it up. He nods, says he'll try, maybe even books one night to calm the storm. But then it slips again. Why? Because his lack of initiative wasn't about forgetting. It was about a loss of urgency. You cannot teach urgency with reminders. Urgency is born from fear of losing something valuable. And once that fear is gone, no amount of negotiation will resurrect it. This is why many women waste months, even years, in what I call the slow fade. He's still there. He still shows up in some form. But the vitality of his presence is gone. And the tragedy is not that he leaves. It's that he lingers. Because when he lingers, you hold on to the ghost of the man he was, waiting for his old energy to return. But ghosts don't come back. Once interest dies, it rarely resurrects. It can only be replaced by a new spark, a reset, a re-establishment of polarity. You might think, so if a man loses interest, does that mean I have no power? The opposite is true. You hold more power than you realize, but only if you stop playing the wrong game. The wrong game is chasing. The wrong game is explaining, persuading, demanding. Those are the tools of someone who has already lost the frame. The right game is understanding that a man's attraction is not maintained by words, but by perception. How he perceives you, how rare you are, how much of his effort is required to keep you. That is the foundation. Consider the diamond analogy. Diamonds are not inherently the most beautiful stones. What makes them valuable is their scarcity, the difficulty of acquiring them, and the perception that they cannot easily be replaced. If you could buy diamonds on every street corner for a few dollars, their appeal would vanish overnight. This is exactly how male psychology operates in relationships. If he perceives you as abundant, guaranteed, always available, your value in his subconscious decreases. If he perceives you as rare, independent, and not fully secured, his instinct to protect and pursue you intensifies. So when a man begins to lose interest, the strategic question is not, how do I pull him back? The question is, how do I reposition myself so that he feels the risk of losing me again? Because interest is fueled by risk, not comfort. When he believes you can be replaced, he grows careless. When he believes he could be replaced, he grows relentless. That distinction changes everything. And here's where most women make their mistake. They confuse loyalty with strategy. They think, if I just keep showing him I'm committed, he'll eventually realize my worth. But that logic belongs to female psychology, not male. A man does not suddenly wake up one day overwhelmed by gratitude because you endured his neglect. On the contrary, the more you endure, the more he normalizes your endurance. He doesn't see sacrifice as value. He sees sacrifice as expectation. What once was special becomes standard, and what becomes standard loses its power to captivate. This is why the hidden signs of a man losing interest are not just red flags. They are opportunities. They are signals telling you it's time to shift your behavior, to stop rewarding his withdrawal with more of your investment. When his texts slow down, don't compensate by sending longer ones. When he cancels plans, don't beg for another night. Fill your time with something else. When his energy drops, don't pour more of yours to fix it. Instead, mirror the distance, rebalance the scale. Because nothing awakens a man's primal fear faster than realizing the woman he took for granted might no longer be within his reach. But the question is, how far can a woman go in rebalancing the scale before the man is already too far gone? And how do you know the difference between a man who is simply comfortable and a man who is already detaching? The line between comfort and detachment is razor thin, and most women misread it. Comfort means he feels safe with you, but he still invests. Detachment means he feels secured, and so he stops investing. To the untrained eye, both states look similar. Less chasing, less urgency, more stability. But the difference lies in the energy behind his actions. A man who is comfortable still shows consistency. He may not text as obsessively as he did in the beginning, but he shows up with reliability. He keeps his word. He makes time. He chooses presence. That's not disinterest. That's the evolution of attraction into stability. But detachment is different. Detachment carries the scent of neglect. His responses shrink, not just in length but in enthusiasm. His presence becomes conditional, based on convenience, not intention. He starts to appear less like a partner and more like a roommate who occasionally remembers you exist. And here is the brutal truth. Once a man slips into this state, you cannot inspire his interest by reminding him of who you were to him. Attraction is not a museum. It doesn't revive old exhibits. It responds to present perception. So, how do you know which side of the line you're on? Look at his sacrifices. Comfort makes a man sacrifice willingly, because even in ease, he values the bond. Detachment makes a man calculate every effort, weighing whether you're worth the inconvenience. If he once drove an hour to see you and now complains about a 10-minute drive, you're not in comfort. You're in decline. This distinction is everything. Because many women waste emotional energy trying to breathe life into a man's detachment, thinking it's just a phase of comfort. They justify it. They cover for it. They lower their standards. And with every excuse, they sink deeper into a dynamic where his lack of effort is normalized. What you accept repeatedly, you teach him to give consistently. Here's where primal psychology strikes again. A man is hardwired to pursue what he perceives as scarce. Scarcity is not about pretending to be busy or playing games. It's about genuinely living a life that does not orbit around him. When he senses that your world is larger than the space he occupies, he feels the need to prove his value again. But when he senses that your world contracts around his every move, he feels no urgency because there is no risk of replacement. Think of it this way. In the animal kingdom, a male lion does not guard grass. He guards territory that other males want. The intensity of his presence comes from the threat of competition. In human dynamics, the same instinct applies. If he senses no competition, no challenge, no possibility that you might attract attention elsewhere, his primal urgency fades. You don't have to parade other men around him. That's not the point. The point is that he must feel, through your behavior and lifestyle, that you are a woman who commands attention, even if you are not actively seeking it. And this is where strategy separates you from the majority. The majority panic when interest fades. They confront, they demand, they lecture. They explain their feelings in long conversations that a man nods through without absorbing. Why? Because words do not rewire attraction. Behavior does. Interest is not logical, it's instinctual. You cannot argue a man back into desire, but you can shift the dynamic by changing the emotional equation he experiences when he interacts with you. Consider an example. A man begins canceling plans last minute. The average woman protests, gets upset, demands a better effort. He apologizes, promises to improve, and then repeats the pattern. Nothing changes, but the strategic woman responds differently. She doesn't fight for the plan. She simply replaces the canceled night with something more valuable to her. She doesn't wait by the phone for his reschedule. She lives. She thrives. And when he finally comes back expecting her availability, he finds distance. That distance stings his ego. That sting reignites his awareness of risk. And that awareness is the seed of renewed pursuit. The truth is brutal, but freeing. Men value what they feel they can lose. If his perception is that you cannot be lost, he will treat you accordingly. If his perception is that you live in abundance, with options, with independence, with standards, he will align his behavior to secure his place. Now, some women fear that adopting this strategy will push him away completely. But here is the paradox. If distance makes him disappear, he was already gone. A man truly invested will rise to meet the challenge. A man who was lingering out of convenience will fall away. Either outcome empowers you, because clarity eliminates wasted time. So the hidden signs of fading interest are not just warnings, they are filters. They reveal who is willing to fight for their place in your life and who was only ever passing through. And if you read them correctly, you gain what most women never have: control of the frame. This is where everything comes full circle. The signs of disinterest are not punishments. They are opportunities to reset the dynamic, to protect your energy, to demand alignment without ever having to beg for it. Because the highest form of power in attraction is not convincing someone to stay, it's embodying so much value that staying feels like the only logical choice for him. And so the final question becomes this: when you see the signs, do you panic and cling tighter? Or do you pivot and embody the scarcity that reawakens his pursuit? Because that choice determines whether you spend your time chasing fading interest or commanding unwavering respect.